All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode on Fit as a Fiddle. We have our guest today, Arpan Gauchan. She is a Hatha yoga teacher. She's currently teaching in the Poconos Mountains area in Pennsylvania in an ashram, which is sort of like a spiritual place of worship, prayer, and service. And it's called Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. But she actually comes from Nepal, and then she made her way to South India at one point, and then she made her way to the United States. So today we're going to be talking about her spiritual journey through yoga and meditation and all of the wonderful, amazing things that ground us in this crazy world. So welcome to the show, Arpan.
Thank you so much, Sneha. Lovely to be here. Thank you. And that was a good introduction. I never thought of it that way, making my way all the way from Nepal to India to here. Yeah, that's a huge journey.
Well, I mean, let's go right there then. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your past, your history, kind of where your roots are from, and how your journey evolved through to where you are right now, teaching yoga.
Yeah, wow, that's a long story, but yes. I'm from Nepal, but I only lived there until I was 12 years. 12 years old, and then I was shipped off to a boarding school in India, and then I pretty much studied and worked there, and I lived in Bombay for 10 years. I was in film production. That was my job, and that's what I was doing for a long time. And then I found something in Ramana Maharishi's teachings, who is like this sage from the early 20th century. So he's wonderful, and I'm sure all of you, I mean, he's big in the West as well. This who am I is like this, everyone talks about it now. So I got into his teaching, and I moved to South India for that reason, to be near his ashram. And then after 2.5 years, I found myself in US in his ashram again in New York, Queens, and I was there for a few months, about a year. And now I'm here teaching yoga in another ashram, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. Yeah.
Amazing. I would love to learn about your experience being in the ashram in India, and your experiences there. How was it? What was it like?
Well, I was in this really cool place called Auroville near Pondicherry, right? And it's a place started by this French woman who they called a mother in the 70s. So it's the whole idea of Auroville is like this community which runs on no money. It's no money economy, and you live off the land, and you do creative things and things like that. You just live off the land, and you stay in a community, and they're about like 3,000 people there. It's huge. It's massive. They've reforested the whole area. It was pretty much a desert when it started, and it's a fun place. You should check it out. Auroville. That's where I stayed, so that I was near Tiruvannamalai, which is Ramana Maharishi's ashram. That was 2.5 hours drive from where I was. And my experience there was lovely because I was pretty much in the forest throughout. Pretty much isolated, and if I really felt like it, I could just go out and meet a few people, like-minded people, very steeped in spirituality, especially the non-dual teaching. And it was fun, actually. I really love that place, and I recommend everyone go there.
Amazing.
It's a really nice community.
Pondicherry is not too far from where my family kind of was raised in India, in South India as well. So I've heard of it, and I've definitely been there a couple of times. But I've never been to, I don't think, at least maybe as a child I have, and I don't know, but at least in my adult years, I've never been to the ashram there, and that would be an awesome experience. And we talked about this offline, but the Ramana Maharishi ashram here in Queens, it's not that far either. It's probably like 20-30 minute drive away from the city, from Manhattan, where I am right now. But we'll go together. We talked about this. We'll go together.
It's called Arunachala Ashram. It's a very small house. It's really intimate there, and all devotees of Ramana Maharishi, and it's wonderful. Yeah, we should go together when after all this COVID situation is over.
Yes.
Make a trip.
I would be excited to do that with you. All right. So tell us about what brought you specifically into yoga, and then how did you decide that you wanted to be a yoga teacher, and what is that experience like for you?
Yeah, when I talk of my yoga journey, I really have to acknowledge my teacher. I started learning from this wonderful woman, Shamim Akhtar in Bombay, who was a Shivananda teacher. And I learned from her for about 3 or 4 years or 5 years, I'm not sure. I'm really bad with timelines and dates. So I learned from her, and I had been hopping around yoga studio to yoga studio, not really finding it, really not finding it really, make sense. But I knew there was something more deeper to it intuitively. And I started pretty much in Nepal actually when I was 16. I went to this ashram and I did some yoga and I loved it. Whatever I got a sense of, whatever I could understand from what they were saying, it was beautiful. And I couldn't place my finger on it though. I knew it was working, it was doing something, but I couldn't figure it out. And it took me until like I was 21 again to come back to Shamim in Bombay, who's this really cool teacher, and she's in her, I mean, age is not a factor, but yet, to be teaching in Bombay as a woman running a yoga studio, I mean, I really love her immensely. I love her energy. And she taught me yoga, and she was very strict, so in certain sense, very not traditional, but let's say it wouldn't work in US, the style of teaching.
I
But
know
that's
exactly what you mean.
yeah. So I have, this yoga journey, I have to thank her for it. I mean, she just, the way she taught the class, not just, even if you arrive like a minute late to the class, she would really give you a earful, and she would say yoga does not start, on the mat. It's your attitude when you wake up in the morning. And that was beautiful to learn. And she didn't care if the students left or came, and she would teach even if it was just one student. And I love that about her, and so eventually, after a few years, I found myself in Tamil Nadu in this place called Oroville. And then I thought, well, hold on, Kerala is right here and I'm not doing much. Might as well go get a degree. And that's why I got a degree on a whim, actually, just to be in an ashram setting. I thought that was a nice idea. And I never, ever in my wildest dream thought I'd teach yoga, really, And then here I am, that's life. I mean, the thing you say no to the most is what I'm most comfortable with, in fact, and I just love teaching people now. And also it's that thing that when you're teaching somebody, especially with yoga or meditation, you're not thinking about yourself, and that's so beautiful, because that selflessness, we talk about it so much. You can really, you're really not thinking about yourself. That's really being selfless, really, and just sharing whatever you know. And it's not even what you know, really. It's just, I feel in some sense, if you're just like channeling it, or well, for lack of better term, actually channeling sounds a bit but you're just sharing, and it's nice to have a community and to be able to share and do this, really. Yeah.
Well, I think that's amazing. And for listeners, I did get an opportunity to take a yoga class with Arpan in our Shavidya Gurukulam, like almost a month or so ago, actually, maybe 2 months ago. And it was just beautiful. And I remember I haven't taken an actual yoga class from a teacher in an extremely long time. So the reason for that is, for my experience with yoga comes from when I was a very small child. My mom has been doing yoga and learning for as long as I really know. I'm a Bharatanatyam Indian classical dancer. So a lot of our movements and postures and mudras and all this stuff kind of hails from that cultural tradition. So it's been a big part of my life since I had any level of consciousness.
And you're a yoga teacher, right?
Correct. So well, when I moved to New York, my entire perception of what yoga was completely changed, because it is in an extremely different setting from what I understand from the traditional kind of more Indian influence. And what I saw was, I went to NYU. I moved to New York because I went to NYU, and downtown there are a lot of these kind of boutique yoga studios and teachers, and everybody, nobody looked like me. Nobody came from my culture, and was different for me, because I was used to engaging in spiritual yoga kind of like conversations and doing that kind of stuff with people from my culture. So it was refreshing in a lot of ways, but I also had a lot of mixed feelings in some cases, which we're totally going to get into and have like open conversations about that, based on your experience as well. And then of course I went off and became a yoga teacher myself, and now I'm a physical therapist. I have my own practice, but it's been so long since I've taken an actual yoga class from somebody else. It could have been like maybe like 7 to 8 years, perhaps. Honestly, I think it's been probably around that amount of time, because I have my own practice and I incorporate kind of like my own movement concepts from my DPT degree and from my dance background and from my yoga background and my fitness background and all of that. And I just create what makes sense for my body. And so when I took your class, coming back to the point, it was so nice and refreshing and grounding. The word for it isn't quite, it feels like simple, but in like the best version of simple. There was like no hoopla. There was no, and we talked about this after the class, there was no sense of competition with the people around you, or what I was used to in New York, which is everyone trying to do like the best version and progressions until you're like in a twist that like doesn't make any sense to anybody.
And everyone just looking at that one person and
and being like, oh, okay, well, I'm not gonna ever be there. But my point is that I think I was very refreshing, and it was really nice.
Thank you.
See you teach the class, and also to be in an environment again where I was learning and from somebody else's perspective, because you get so into your own world and your own head and your own ways of moving. So it's nice to see you do that. But on that topic, I know we've had conversations offline about this a lot, but you've really traveled, throughout, lots of different countries, and you've seen the way that yoga has shaped its, the way that it's presented in different cultures and different people. And I guess my question now is, how do you compare the way that you found, your experiences with yoga in India, in Nepal, and, whether it's South India or Bombay or really anywhere on Indian soil or Desi soil, to compare to what you kind of see in the West, traveling through the different states and experiencing what other people have been putting out?
Right.
So that's a loaded question, by the way. I understand.
I know it's it's an ongoing discussion, right?
But that's the purpose of the podcast.
Absolutely. There you go. So I think you summed it up really well, Sneha. You said my teaching was simple, and I don't take credit for that, because that's how the teaching is in India or Nepal, in that subcontinent. That's what it is. It's simple, right? It's not about, right now, what I see here in the West, of course, there are good teachers here too, right? But what I see is it's all about the clothes. It's all about who can do the best version or the toughest version, the asana, who can get into this really difficult poses. It's about how stretchy you are, how beautiful. Let's come to that, how beautiful you are and how young you are, right? It's completely taken away the space from even like older people approaching yoga, or people who cannot even touch their toes, or who are unwell, or who cannot even get on a mat. It's completely become this very sad, I'm sorry to say this, but what I see is it's all about, and the music that they play when you do yoga in studios is, I was like quite shocked with that in the beginning. I went to this gym and I did yoga. Of course, all gyms are teaching yoga. And I guess it's not a conducive environment. Like you said, it's a spiritual practice, right? And it is a spiritual practice. It should be simple. It should be inclusive. It's for everybody and everyone. It's not just for the, beautiful looking, super bendy, anyone in like tight pants. It's not about that at all.
By the way, what kind of music were they playing? Sorry to interrupt.
Some pop, I don't know, the latest pop music, whatever was trending then, that was playing. And I was like, well, I wasn't sure, I found out first, okay, let me be open. Let's see what this does. But then I was like, no, this is not what it is, everybody was like call it aerobics then, right? Call it Pilates. That's what's closest to yoga, right? Call it just sweating it out. You're there to lose weight. You can see you're there to like set a goal and meet that goal. You want to get into that handstand, perfect handstand, and hold it for a longer length. Call it that. Okay. It's something else. And I don't think it's yoga, right? Because yoga is spiritual at the end of the day. You cannot take culture out of the equation. You cannot take history out of the equation and what it comes with and just, just deliver what suits you. It's like perfectly marketed now. You know what I mean? It's just delivered and packaged in such a way that it's taken out the whole meaning of yoga out of it, out of the equation. And of course, you hear people using the Sanskrit terms and, throwing in the benefits of the pose a lot and saying what it does to your chakras and all that. But is that yoga, right? Is that yoga then? I mean, it needs to be seriously looked at. And there are a few people having this conversation, and especially, I have to mention, though, I heard Sadhguru talk about it. And he said, which was interesting because he did say what's happening in US is not yoga, right?
Yeah.
And he apparently spoke to these real big yoga teachers here in the US and said, like, you need to just, not teach now because you need to learn it properly and be able to teach properly, right? Even if you know everything, it's how you teach, right? If you're just there to make the money and to get in as many, people on the mat as possible, and you're like churning it out like it's some factory, one class after the other, one class after the other, and there's just no sense of community. There's no sense of this bond over this teaching, this beautiful teaching. It's yoga is not just about asanas, and we say yoga, but it's just asanas at the end of the day, right?
I know. That's the biggest piece, is that this is, well, I'll let you keep going and then I have another question.
Yeah, it's asanas, and you don't even get to the pranayama. Okay, there's this different school which does not teach pranayama at all, but then incorporating some breathing exercise, incorporating what the practice means, really appreciating and giving credit where it's due, right? Not just appropriating it and just taking what suits you and then serving it in a platter that makes it look like it's something completely different, right? And that's what I guess that's the direction that yoga is heading here, which is a bit scary in a sense, because whatever America does, the world does, right? So I don't know what's happening in India at the moment, but at least when I was there, it was not so big. It was not, the craze of yoga was not still big. I mean, Bikram yoga had come out, yes, but it's not that hyped and so cool. Now it's become so cool that everyone wants to do it, and young people especially want to do it, and it's not just about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's happening. Namaste is happening, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, Namaste. I like that.
Drives me crazy. Don't say that word.
Yeah, Namaste. I like that. We should like trend it.
Okay, so I know you touched on this thematically a lot in what you were just explaining, but if you could explain to somebody, that could be either somebody who is taking a yoga class, who knows enough about yoga to just understand the asanas and know what a warrior pose is. It's the most common thing, and know what a tadasana or a mountain, whatever, they just know these few things about it. Or a yoga teacher who, has a general understanding of yoga poses and be able to take a 1-hour class, for example. If you were to speak to that person, and this could be a run-on sentence, and you can make this as long as or as short as you'd like. What is yoga, really?
Well, that's what I say in every class too. Whether it's for a beginner, it doesn't. I mean, I don't really take into account who's walked in just new into the class. I just say what it is. Right from the start. This is what yoga is, and yoga is not being, building on that, being body centric. That's what yoga is here, right? It's all about the body. Yoga is about understanding what the body is, what the mind is, and being able to dissociate from that. Your body identification, mind identification, you have to detach from that. And you create that space. When you do yoga, you're creating that space. You're aware of that space. When you do asanas, when you stay with the breath, you get to understand that you're not your body and not your mind, and that may be scary for some people, because if you're so focused on your Instagram posts and how you look, and where, if you say you're not your body and not your mind, it can't just be a caption, right? In your Instagram post, it can't just be this, something pretty you write to attract people, but that's what it is. You want to dissociate from the body and the mind, and that's what yoga is. It's stepping into that awareness, knowing that you are awareness. That's what it is, really, in a sense. So that means you don't want to be body centric and body focused at all. That defeats the purpose entirely.
Yeah. Wow. I that's a beautiful way to put it. I haven't heard it said that way, but it makes so much sense. And I think that the piece that a lot of people also don't understand on that same note is that while the purpose of asanas is in order to create harmony in your body, there's still a way that you can make that not about your body and about the way you look. It's about, I think the piece that gets missed is it's about the way you feel. It's not about the way you look. And if the way you look is directly correlated to the way you feel, which is a problem in all senses, right?
Yeah,
that's what needs to be changed. That's the piece that needs to be understood, because people can say, oh, I feel better when I look better. And that I think is the piece that people tend to run to when it comes to exercise, working out, Pilates, and now yoga turning into a workout class, which is what it is in New York City. There, this, Arpan, it is flooded. I have a yoga studio literally around the corner from my block, and I live in Washington Heights. I don't even live midtown or up, like downtown or anything.
Yeah, I've seen that there. Yeah, it's crazy. Every turn you take, there's a yoga studio, and I'm wondering, like, who does yoga in a, it's like full of offices there. I guess they just
they do. A lot of people are doing it, but they do it for that. I need to get my workout in. I need to get my stretching in. I need to get this in. And this is obviously a generalization. Of course, there are people out there who really take the practice seriously in their own ways and customize it and personalize it. But in general, this is what we're seeing. And that's what Arpan's touching on as well, is that it's turned into something. And this is, I don't know. I mean, that's why we're having this conversation, but I don't know how it could possibly at this point, because it's so deeply ingrained in the American culture. The word yoga immediately triggers certain responses and certain things in people's minds because of the associations of media, money, and general appearance and superficiality, overall superficiality. And it's the funny part, Arpan, and I think you can touch on this, is the practice of yoga, which of course is not just asanas. It's a big, it's much bigger than that. It includes many other components outside of getting into a position physically. It's literally the opposite of superficiality. It is the essence of it is exactly the opposite. And so I guess my next topic, or next thing that I want to bring up with you and hear your thoughts on, is, do you think that that the practice of yoga and the practice of spirituality / and or religion can ever be extricated from one another? And what do you feel about those concepts of yoga, spirituality, and religion? What do you think?
Well, that's that's
hard questions.
Hard question.
I like hard questions.
Yes. Well, spirituality and yoga, I think, should not be separated at all, right? Because even if you see the way it's marketed here, they do sort of market it as a spiritual exercise, a practice. That's how it's marketed. Really, it's all about marketing here. That's one thing you learn very quickly. It's how you position yourself, it's how you package everything, the right words. And that's what it's about here. And you cannot separate the two. Religion also you cannot separate. It does come together with spirituality and yoga. But religion, I feel, is again, it's a very long discussion with me. It's a separate subject altogether. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to be super religious. Religion can mean being spiritual. If that's what religion is, good, thumbs up, right? But if religion means being, fanatic, or taking that space of like, uh, I think it's evolving. Religion evolves also, right? Like everything else, nothing is stagnant ever. But yeah, that's a whole another conversation with religion. I come from a very religious country, a Hindu religious country, and I am religious, yes, and I am spiritual, yes. But what religion has become these days, how it's portrayed in the media and how it's talked about is very different. And it may have it puts off some people. So, more than religion, I'd say spirituality. I mean, but of course, we cannot take these two things away from each other, even spirituality and religion, because if you go to India or Nepal, you'll see religion is in every corner of in every house, it's there, and that's culture. And that's a different conversation altogether when religion is your culture, right? But when religion is something very, very not ingrained in your life, not, it's like something you do, then that's a different conversation. I mean, there are different religions here in the world now, and it's a whole other conversation, because religion is every religion is put in the same basket, and you look at it in the same context. So I feel what's in India and the subcontinent, and I'm getting into a very sticky subject.
I know, I threw you into the deep end.
Yeah.
Everyone in the West, everyone who's listening to this is like, oh my God, right now, right?
Yeah. Like, what is she talking about?
Right. But you're absolutely right in the sense that, I mean, I am from the Hindu religion, I am from the Indian culture, and I am from a yoga tradition. If you would like to say those kinds of, nouns for those adjectives. And so for my personal understanding and the way that I actually lived my life in the way that I've been raised, and even though I've been raised in America my entire life, is that those things are pretty much the same to me.
Yeah.
Because like Hinduism is such a deep ingrained part of the Indian culture and the Indian way of, because in Hinduism, to the way that I've been taught and the way that it's presented in India, at least, and not the way that it's presented in many other parts of the world, is it's not a religion, it's a way of life. It's sanatana dharma. And that's, again, I know this is a whole different conversation, but to tie it back to yoga, in terms of yoga asanas, these words, the word, all those Sanskrit words that people use comes from the land of India, comes from the religion of Hinduism.
Yes.
And it's literally, so it's hard to extricate all of those things away from each other and pull them apart and look at them in silo, especially from somebody like you and I who come from Indian and, from Southeast Asia, from South India. I've lived and spent time in South India and understand kind of like the very deep rooted aspects of these concepts, because these are concepts. Like pranayama equals breathing is just the definition in an American dictionary, right? But pranayama is so much more than that, from the roots of what it actually means. Like it's hard to create translations just because they're large theories and large concepts. I don't know if you want to touch on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right, though, that, there's so many terms that we use in Sanskrit, which is, I'm going to say Sanskrit and not Sanskrit. Sanskrit, which we use, that is very difficult to translate in English, right? Like you said, it's got a whole meaning to itself, and you can go on and on about it, So it's very difficult to translate that. But yeah, you're right, though, that the Hindu religion, spirituality, and yoga, you cannot separate. You cannot just pick the one that suits you and say, well, I don't want the rest. You cannot do that, because, especially simply saying, right? What if here you see the marketing ads of yoga studios and classes, it's about love and compassion and peace and all that. But then if your whole action is about taking this, just cherry picking one thing that you like and rejecting the rest, what are you doing to that culture, right? Are you being compassionate? Is that a peaceful way of taking something? Is that, I mean, are you going to question that at all, right? What are you doing with that? Because it's not something that we don't revere and we just take it very lightly. It's something we take it very seriously, the spiritual practices, what yoga means, the lineage, the heritage. There's so much reverence. In fact, yoga was taught for free. And most yoga ashrams you go to now in India, it's also pretty very, very reasonable. It's not like you're insanely expensive, So it is affordable. It's for everybody. And you cannot take just I think it's a money making game here. That's what it is, right? They've taken what's appealing to the people, and they've just quietly sugar coated, just cherry picked few words: peace, compassion, love. Don't say om. It's religious. Om is bigger than religion. Saying om, it has so much meaning, depth. There's a history to that. You can write a book and read a book on om itself, right? If you've taken something, do not just conveniently drop off the rest, and the meat of it. Do not drop off the meat of it. What you're taking is just, the little bit of, it's a tip of the iceberg. And I think it's sad because it's not just sad for the subcontinent, India and the Indian subcontinent. It's not just injustice, let's say, right? It's not doing big disservice to us, but also you're not taking the meat of it, right? You're not taking the whole of what yoga means and really embracing it, because there's so much there, and everybody will get so much more out of it than just it being a physical exercise, and that's what's sad, that you're not seeing that. The people here, they're not. I don't know what the idea is. I don't know how it started and how it became this way. But I mean, it's important to have this conversation with even people who are, taking this further, out here, the people who don't look like us, for example, who started all, big yoga corporations, you need to have conversations with those people. They need to sit down and talk about it, because you cannot take something. I mean, I can go on and on, but it's just, it's heartbreaking, let's just say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the takeaway from everything that we've said today, the conversation that we've had, is also to open your mind to these different ideas, because you don't know what you don't know. You only know what's been presented and packaged to you. And that's like really not most people's fault that it's been that way. But that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think Arpan also comes with, this, I'm jealous that you spent so much time in Ramana Maharishi's ashram and you've had all these experiences. Like, I want to do that too. One day I just want to go and, live in the forest and you have this experience, but then you also have lived in Mumbai and you are currently in, Pennsylvania, and you have that, both sides of the story, and you understand both sides of the story so acutely. So that's why I thought it would be great for you to talk to our audience today. And for everyone who's listening, this isn't not a knock against anybody or a knock to do anything.
No,
it's just, it's an understanding. It's an opening. It's really just a way to start thinking about things differently that you otherwise may not have thought about. And perhaps to integrate that in ways that make sense to you. Maybe it could just start with speaking to somebody who comes from the culture and just understand their perspectives on yoga, or support an organization that, really speaks of the teachings and the spirituality, as well as the asanas and other things as well. And seek out those resources.
Definitely. No, that's very important, because right now I don't see, I've been to many, many yoga studios around here, and I really don't see people like us. in these studios,
Yeah.
and I know there are many yoga teachers here, and I know that for sure,
Yeah. I mean, Arpan, that's the thing that I said when I first moved to New York and I came to NYU and I took my first yoga class, and there were tons of people. I would take all these classes and there'd be tons of people there. There wasn't a single person who was from my community. And I was like, isn't this from my community though? Why is there not a single Indian person either teaching or taking this class? Why am I the only person who's taking in this material? And I realized it's because it's been packaged in a certain, I realized this years later, is that the way that it has been packaged is not conducive to be inclusive. It's conducive for very one kind of body type, one kind of demographic, which you had just mentioned earlier. But all in all, do you have any other closing words for our audience today, or anything else that you feel like you wanted to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I just want to expand on what I said when I defined yoga. It may come across as, very when you say you want to detach yourself from your body and mind, it's not like you're neglecting it, right? That's what I want to point out here. In fact, you live life more fully. You really use your body well, use your mind well. That's what the point of yoga is. It's not like you treat it indifferently and then not care for it at all. That's not the point. So the whole idea is to I'll also mix Vedanta and yoga, so the non-dual teaching and yoga, although that's a different topic because it's two different tradition or philosophy, let's say. But the whole point is to know yourself, to be happy, and it's important, to, if you're teaching yoga, if you're doing yoga, be inclusive, invite the people in the community there, welcome them, make them feel like the welcome. That's what's important, because what I felt in most places was that like it caters to a certain demographic, and you just feel a bit left out, whether it's your own thing or not, whether it's your own issue or not. You've got to evaluate that too. I mean, it goes both sides, right? Both ends. You want to evaluate that, like, why aren't we going to these yoga studios? Why do we feel left out, and why are we feeling this? Both sides need to examine that, I think. But please, if there are more yoga teachers out there from the Indian subcontinent, please, India and Indian subcontinent, please, come out and be a part of this community. And Sneha, you're doing such a lovely job, and I hope we can connect more to the yoga teachers and build a community. Really, that's what's important.
Yes, I would love that. That would be fantastic to be able to do that with you. Thank you so much for your time, Arpan. Thank you so much for speaking to our audience.
Thank you. It was wonderful.